Great day, everyone. This is Jason Santos, and for today, we will continue the discussion of business analytics. We are already on chapter 3, and we are going to cover pivot tables and dynamic charts. So let's get started. As discussed in our previous discussion, we have the learning objectives for chapter 3, data visualization. And we have covered some of them. And for today, we will be covering pivot tables and a dynamic chart. Okay, pivot tables is one of the most important skills, or creating pivot tables is a skill that is highly necessary and highly usable when you start working. Okay, regardless of your industry, you might be asked to create a pivot table for your boss, for your client, for your customer, so on and so forth. So, to give you a quick idea how a pivot table works, you can see this image. You have certain data here, and on the right side, you can turn a lot of these information into one single table or a single table presentation. So, from this to this. Okay? And later on, I will show you how we could do that. Now let's define first what pivot table is all about, as well as the dynamic charts. So you can think of a pivot table as a report. However, unlike a static report, right, when you say static, it's not moving, it's stagnant. Okay, a pivot table provides an interactive view. Let me underscore this. Okay, interactive view, meaning you can interchange the elements of a table regardless, no matter how you would want to present it. Okay. Later on, we will see what this means. Okay. With very little effort, no formulas, and then you can look at the same data from different perspectives. It's because you can interchange the elements of your data. That's the reason why it says here that you can look at it at different perspectives. You can group the data into categories, break it down into years and months, filter the data, include or exclude categories, and even build charts. And then along with that, since we're talking of data visualization, we have dynamic charts. So when you say dynamic charts, it enables the user to modify inputs and immediately see the results in reports and dashboards. So in the past, when you create a chart, once the chart has been created, it is already static, or it's already fixed. If you would want to make changes in that chart, you would have to delete that and then create another one. But when you say dynamic charts, any changes that you make in your table, your pivot table, or your data in the spreadsheet, the charts would go along with the changes of such data. So later on, we will see that. Okay. So this technique uses range names to enable the interaction. And then the beauty of pivot tables and dynamic charts is that they allow you to interactively explore your data in different ways. So let's go ahead and check some examples here. Let me just pull up my okay, so we have an example of a workbook here. And for better understanding, I'm using the same workbook that we have used when we discussed VLOOKUP. Okay, so here you can see that we have data for the customer name, the payment method, transaction code, source amount, product, and the time of day. Now, this example is just a little, or a small example. Now, if you try to visualize when you are in real world scenarios, this data might have a lot of inputs in it. It might be a spreadsheet that includes thousands and thousands of information. Now, it's going to be difficult for you to present it, or show it to your boss if you have an enormous amount of data. So chances are you might be creating, or you're going to create your report. Okay, you're going to create a report and you are going to use a pivot table for that. So let's try to explore how we can create pivot tables using Google Sheet. Okay. Later on, I will show you the difference in Excel. So let's start first with Google Sheet. If you would like to look for pivot table, all you have to do is go to the data menu, this one, click data menu, and then click pivot table. So once you have clicked pivot table, it would ask you for the range and where you would like to insert it. Where you want it to be placed in a new sheet or your existing sheet. So for our case, we are going to select our range, which is this one, all the way down to H83. And in our case, since our sheet is already filled with so much data, I prefer having the pivot table on a new sheet. It would depend. If you would want to place it in the existing sheet, it's okay. It's a matter of preference. In my case, I would like to start a new sheet so that I would just be focused on one information. Okay. So let me select new sheet. It's already ticked, and then I will just press create. So once we have created the pivot table, a new sheet is created. Okay, so this is our new sheet, and then here on the upper left side you can see the pivot area, and then on the right side you have a pane here which shows your pivot table editor. So in the pivot table editor, you will see rows, columns, values, and filters, and then some suggested ways on how you could present it. Now to show you how this works, let me try to add elements on rows, columns, values. So let's go to the rows and add some information on it. Let's say I would like to see all the payment information, or sorry, payment method used here. So I'll just click add, and you would notice that I can see cash, COD, credit, and GCash in my payment methods. Okay, and they were added in the rows because we are in the row portion of our pivot table editor. Now on the column section, let's say I would like to see the product. Okay, what type of product goes along with those payment methods? Okay, so you can see Disney Plus, HBO, Netflix, so on and so forth. So let me just put in some divisions here so you can see it clearly. Here, so there. So you can already see columns show you the product, and then the rows show you the payment. And then for the values, I would just select the amount. Of course, I would like to see how much were made per per type of product that we have. So for example, you can see the breakdown here. For Disney Plus, we have a total of 14,836, and then the payments were credit and GCash. And then for HBO Max, we have cash, COD, and credit, total of 16,000. And then for Netflix, it has covered all modes of payment and has the highest amount of purchases. So you see, with just a matter of clicking or adding elements in the pivot table editor, I was able to create this nice small report. Okay, and again, as we have mentioned, the beauty with pivot table is that you can edit the elements. No? This is a dynamic, interactive report. So let's say your boss tells you, I would like to see this element and that element. So instead of going over your data again and presenting a new one, you can just go ahead and remove the elements, right? See, I have removed the elements, so it's clear again. And then I could add different information, like I could put in the customer name on the rows. For my column, I could put in the payments, and then how much, okay, the values, amount, how much each customer has spent. So see, okay, it is now drilled down per customer. So like what we said earlier, this is an interactive report. If I would go back to, let me just put the earlier presentation. So sorry, let me remove time of day, rows. I would be adding the payment method. Then for the columns, we have product, and then for the values I have the amounts. Oops, it's showing as counter. I'll just switch it over to sum. Okay, so there. Now going back, if I would go to my raw data, and then let's say I would like for you to remember this. Our total is 109,000. That's the total amount of sales we have. Let's say I would go to my raw data, and then I would change or remove these purchases for whatever reason. Let's say these were invalid purchases, or there were some discrepancies, so I removed that. Okay, they never existed. If I would go back to my pivot, you would notice that from 109,000 it went down to 91. That's because whatever changes we make in the raw data, it will reflect in the pivot table. So if I would put back the amounts, I just undid the action, and then I would go back here, you would notice it's back to 109,000. Okay, so one more example here. Let's say I removed all the COD payment, and then let's say I turned all of the COD payment to cash. Notice that the payments are no longer reflecting COD. That's because I have removed those parts in my report. Okay, so again, that's the beauty of having this type of reports, the pivot reports, in our plethora of tools we can use. Now, as I was saying earlier, we have the dynamic charts, okay? So any changes we would make on a chart that we will create, we will be able to edit that, okay, real time, or have that reflected real time. So let me pull out a chart here. Insert chart. So notice that when I pulled up the chart, it's already pre-selected. It already selected the data I have for my pivot. But at any time, you can actually edit the area here in the chart area. Okay, you can just change this if you would want. Now, as I was saying, any changes that we will make in our data would also reflect in the chart. So if I would, let me just close that. First, put a filter here. And then, so if I would remove all the other parts here or other selections and just retain cash, notice that my chart changes as well. So in this case, I would just left with cash. Now if I would like to compare cash with COD, and then I selected COD in my filter, there the chart updated as well. Okay, so that's the good thing with Google Sheets. Okay, there is an option to create a dynamic chart, meaning any changes that you would make on your pivot table would also reflect on the chart. Okay, so again, if we would be using Excel, so let me just use an old Excel file here. If I would want to execute pivot table using Excel, I would just go to insert menu and not the data menu. So insert menu, and then I have the pivot table here. So when I click pivot table, it would also ask me the range and whether I would like to have it created in a new worksheet. So in this case, I will just select new worksheet, and then a new worksheet would pop up with the pivot table prompt. And if I would like to replicate what I did earlier, so I'm just going to drag elements here. Like for example, I'm going to drag the payment in rows, and then the product in columns, and then the amount in values. Okay, the amount is in count. Let me just change the value field settings to sum, and then it will show the sum amount, which is also 109,000. You can change it to currency in order for you to easily see it in monetary terms. You can change it to peso. Okay, just have to select the right currency amount. Now, as I was saying earlier, any changes that I would make here is supposed to reflect in my pivot table. So let's say I deleted all of these amounts or these payments. Okay, you would notice that it has not reflected in my pivot table because in Excel, it is not automatically done. It is manually done. Unlike with Google Sheets, that any changes you will make, it will reflect right away. Here, you would have to manually refresh it. So what should I do? I would just right click here in any part of my pivot area and then click refresh button. So when I click the refresh button, the total updated to 83,619, reflecting all of the amounts that I have removed. Okay? So there you have it. I hope you were able to understand pivot tables and dynamic charts. Okay? So I will be leaving an assignment on your Google Classroom. You will be tasked to create pivot tables filtering, just like this. Okay, data, and then filter. Same with this one, filter. Same with Google Sheets. Okay, and then you would also have to create a dynamic chart. Okay, so with that, thank you so much. I hope you have learned something from this discussion, and see you on the next video. To God be all the glory. See you on the next video.